What's up everybody, I'm your Thinking Cap Benji and welcome back to Best FPL Captain. Last game week we had the malfunctioning robot in at number 1 and guess what? He blanked. Can we bounce back? This weekend, let's find out. Thinking Cap activated. I am 100% positive that Haaland owners are a little bit pissed off with that 2-pointer. Look, I'm not a Haaland owner, but I did end up going with Palmer captain, so I'm not too upset with how things played out. But I do think robot captainers were a little unlucky. Watching that game back, I did see a few occasions where the likes of Savinho and Foden were going for the shots themselves. There was actually a few breakaways where Haaland wasn't slipped in, and I do feel your pain because his underperformance also impacts my captaincy record. Some positives from review was the placing of the midfielders, got those two spot on, so I'm happy about that one. And obviously, Isak was the best performing premium on last game week's shortlist, and it goes to show sometimes the high risk does pay out. Congrats if you went with him. For game week 22, there's two Saturday options for captaincy. First, Isak in the early kickoff at home to Bournemouth, and Salah has a 3 o'clock kickoff against Brentford. Palmer does have a late night fixture on Monday, a pretty tasty one too at home to Wolves, but there was some injury news that came out today with Maresca. Apparently Palmer and some other key Chelsea players picked up knocks and weren't in training today. We'll discuss those factors in depth later in this video. From a historical perspective, I'd say Haaland has the edge. He's maintained an excellent record versus promoted sides away from home, only blanking in one start, which was in his debut season against Forest. Both Palmer and Isak have returned nicely in their exact fixtures, but they've got only a 1-game sample size. Salah started twice away to Brentford. He blanked in one and scored in the other. But last season, Salah did come off the bench. It wasn't a start. He came off the bench for an injured Diogo Jota against Brentford in game week 25, and he bagged 11 points, 1 goal, and 1 assist. So yeah, I think he has that positive preference, and his home and away record against the Bees is fantastic. So I definitely say Salah does enjoy this fixture. From a data perspective, Ipswich stand out as the most targetable team. They have the highest XGC total, they're averaging way more defensive errors per game compared to all of the other clubs, and they ship big chances for fun. Despite the numbers, my eye test has seen a change in McKenna's playstyle against the big teams recently. He seemed to turn to this low block counter-attack style, which was successful against Chelsea. We saw that when they beat them 2-0, I think it was, and I do expect him to utilize that same game plan against Man City. And trust me, there will be bodies around Erling Haaland, especially because of how he destroyed them in game week 2. They're going to mark him out of this game, or at least try to, and I don't expect this to be an easy fixture, and those breakaway situations that Haaland had against Brentford, well, I'm not expecting him to get many of those on Sunday. Wolves, they had a little bit of a manager bounce when Vitor Pereira came in, but the loss of Cunha and Semedo and Lamina falling out, which by the looks of things has been sorted. Vitor Pereira did say today in his press conference, basically they've squashed the beef. And for me, Lamina is a big player for them, especially defensively. So that's definitely a negative factor for Palmer captaincy because it looks like Lamina is back in favor. That being said, though, Wolves have conceded the most goals in the league so far. Newcastle showed us in midweek that they are a targetable fixture, and I do believe that, but I also believe the Chelsea player injuries and Chelsea's recent form makes this a little less appealing from a targetability perspective. Brentford are a targetable fixture too, and their defensive numbers, they haven't been good this season at all, but Salah is playing on the more defensive side of Brentford's defense with Lewis Potter and Jensen, the regular starters, on that left flank. They're likely to be instructed to stick very tight to Salah, but there will be a few breakaways from corners. The game will get stretched at times, and if Thomas Frank lets the reins go a little bit, Salah should do pretty well. Considering it is also at the G-Tech, I wouldn't be surprised to see Frank push some bodies forward late on like he did against Manchester City. So Brentford, definitely targetable, and this might come as a surprise, but I do believe Bournemouth are there to be got at. They've just played away to Chelsea, and now they've got the early Saturday kickoff at St. James. I'm expecting them to be a little bit leggy, and they've just lost their only fit right back in James Hill, which is great for Gordon as well as Isak. Both like to connect regularly down that side of the pitch. Those factors do boost Bournemouth's targetability, in my opinion, and it does boost Isak's captaincy potential. It's Isak again coming out on top. He's got the strongest bias towards his upcoming game day. Excellent return rate in Saturday home games. really positive blank rate and double-digit haul rates too, so there's not really much to dislike with his profile. Salah is in the best game day form, averaging 9 points across the last 5 with 3 double-digit hauls in there, I think, so he's got that explosive potential for sure. My problem with Salah's dataset is the blank rate at 39%. It does suggest inconsistency, a little bit of unreliability, and it's unusual for Mo. Now for Palmer, he doesn't qualify for comparison because of the small sample size of starts, but in the 2 Monday home matches he has started in, he's delivered 2 double-digit hauls, and one of them was his career-high 26-pointer against Everton, so definitely early signs of serious explosive potential. And flipping to the game time performance comparison, Palmer shows the exact same explosivity in his late night points history at Stamford Bridge. A lot more positives with Palmer in this section, and Isak is quite similar. He has only started 3 games in the early kickoff at home, but he's returned in all 3, and he has 2 hauls in those ones as well. Newcastle have a fantastic record in the early kickoff, unbeaten in all of their last 6 half-12 kickoffs. Isak's only blanked once at midday before, home and away, and that was an away game against Aston Villa. So overall, really positive bias from Isak so far, and he's looking like a top candidate at the moment. Salah's appeal does drop off a little bit. His blank rate is up into the 40s, which points to unreliability again. His average points is also quite low, especially for a midfielder. Mo has the worst game time profile. In terms of recovery, Isak's received the least rest days ahead of his upcoming fixture, but his schedule is completely clear next midweek, which is why I've got his expected minutes up at 85. I think the early sub is likely, but he's already shown in this hot form 85 minutes is enough for multiple returns. Haaland has the weakest projected minutes despite receiving the second highest number of rest days, and the low minutes is because he'll be traveling away to PSG in the Champions League, a game which is a must-win considering where City are in the UCL league table. I'm not sure Pep is going to prioritize a Prem fixture against a promoted team away from home when they have an extremely high-stakes Champo fixture just 3 days later. For Salah, he's got the strongest projected minutes along with Palmer, and that's because Liverpool are basically walking the UCL, and their UCL game is at home, so there's no additional travel fatigue, travel time. Liverpool are cruising, first in Champions League, so I really do expect Slot to prioritize Brentford over the Tuesday fixture against Lille, which is why Salah's minutes projections are maxed for 22. Now let's discuss Mr. Cole Palmer, because he's had the most rest days. He's, played last Tuesday at home, now he's playing on the Monday at home, so he hasn't traveled. There's no Chelsea fixture in the coming midweek. He should come out of this section the strongest, but we need to factor in the Maresca team news, because Enzo Maresca said, and I quote, guys, Cole Palmer is a doubt. He was not in the session today. We don't know if he will train in the next 2 days. Levi Colwill was also not in the session. Romeo Lavia and Enzo Fernandez were not involved. All of these guys are key Chelsea players, and the fact that they're dealing with some kind of niggle knock injury, not to mention that Palmer, who's actually the captaincy option, is also dealing with something himself. I really can't put Palmer any higher than 3rd place. Now look, I'm not putting him there because I think he's going to miss the game. This is on the assumption that he does start this one, but I just think there's 4 key Chelsea players with knocks. All of my Chelsea sources have come to me and said, or at least most of them have said, it will affect that unit as a team, because Enzo Fernandez is key in that midfield. Lavia does unlock something different. I know he didn't have a good game, but still. And Colwell, I think he's not going to start that game. He did not come off looking good. So Chelsea also aren't in the best form, and I think Wolves will be up for this one. I can see Wolves getting a result here. In terms of factors, there's a few positives with Palmer. He's got serious explosive potential in the late night games. His historical records are strong. He's never blanked on Monday at home, albeit he's only played twice there. His minutes should be fine if he starts, and the fixture is a targetable one. For me, I'm just weighing the injury factors pretty heavy in my final decision with Palmer, but honestly, he's likely to start. If he doesn't start, then he'll probably just not come off the bench. I don't think Maresca would risk that. So if you're going to be backing him, then make sure you pick a good vice captain. Wildcard spot goes to Erling Haaland. Fixture looks nice on paper, but I'm not convinced at all. And City could have their eyes on PSG away, more so than Ipswich away, which isn't good for Erling captaincy. The turnaround is short, and captain options with a midweek European fixture coming up always have more unpredictable and unsecure minute projections, because you never know what a manager's actually thinking when there's another game in that midweek, especially an important one for Manchester City. And that's why Haaland is where he is, because I think there's a lot of risk there. There are some pros for the robot. His historical record against promoted sides away from home is really good. His game time profile is decent in terms of his explosivity, and he's had good rest. But for me, I don't know if I would be trusting him, especially with a 3-day turnaround and then he's flying to France. So yeah, if you're looking for a parting gift with Haaland, maybe wildcard captaincy is for you. My game week 22 best captain is Alexander Isak, which does mean I am going against the King Mo Salah this weekend. Apart from the rest time and the early sub expectation with Isak, that would be after 80 minutes, of course, there's not much to dislike with his overall captaincy profile. Normally, I don't like targeting Bournemouth as a captaincy fixture, but I feel in this moment they are there for the taking, and with the doubt around Palmer, I do actually like it as a top 2 targetable fixture this week. Areola was averaging the most substitutions per game 3 weeks ago. He made just 2 subs against Chelsea. They've got a ton of injuries, and they don't have a fit right back to face Anthony Gordon, and Isak also loves to drift on that side. Other factors include his early kickoff history, which is excellent, his current form, which is excellent. I also want to target home fixtures, and Isak was top 2 in most categories through this analysis. The only concern is the rest days, which is 3, but even if you compare it to Salah, who most of you will be looking at now, Salah's only had 1 more extra rest day, and Salah's been traveling, so I don't really see it as too much of a gap there. And just on Mo, look, I think he's still a great option. I'm not telling you who to captain, guys. The decision always lies with the manager. I'm just giving you my perspective, my factors, and my results to help you make your own decisions with your captaincy dilemma. If you're someone who plays the EO game and you want to go safe, you don't want to go against the crowd, Salah will be that crowd pick. He will have the vast majority of EO this week, and I do think he's going to get a few chances against Brentford, but again, midweek fixture against Lille makes my minutes projections a little less secure, and we also got news of a Luis Diaz illness. I think there is an illness sweeping through that Liverpool camp. We also got news of a Diogo Jota injury, which does regress Liverpool's attacking potential as a whole. So look, I'm expecting Salah to be heavily marked as well, and that does really regress his overall captaincy potential. But he will be my vice captain with Isak having the armband for game week 22. If you're new around here and if you enjoyed this one, then hit subscribe, drop a like on the video, and I'll speak to you in the next one. Peace.